Welcome to Las Pinata, the podcast where we talk about navigating your creative lifestyle.
He's Terrence, and I'm Dave. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and share the program with your friends. Today, we're going to be talking about
Art education, or what's the value of art education.
or the value of no education at all.
Right.
Or
Is it worth it?
Let's should we talk about what level of education we're dealing with from each of us? I mean, you're more formally educated in art than I am.
I mean, I've got an associate's in art, but then as far as like writing and like video, I got my bachelor's in that. So, and I've got animation like certificates. And so, I mean, I've done a number of like formal studies in the arts and writing realm, I guess. And I've got degrees in that sort.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously I had some high school classes in art, and I guess elementary school too. Trying to think if I took any. I mean, I've got a philosophy degree. That's what I've got, and some people would say that amounts to an art degree, depending on who you talk to. But I don't have any formal art education. Well, maybe sort of. I've read a lot. That's informal, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved with this kind of songwriters retreat program called Song School, the Rocky Mountain Song School, in Lyons, Colorado, and there's some formal education programs there, but it's a lot like taking a seminar at your community college or something like that. It's not like an intensive 6-week course. I haven't done anything like that. So most of the education that I have in whatever art form has been self-taught, for better or worse. I did try to take piano lessons once, and I felt like the instructor, well, as I'm wont to do, I went for the cheapest instructor, right? And so there's probably a reason why she was the cheapest. But I felt like she was treating me like a kid. I was like in my mid-30s at the time, so I wasn't a kid. And I'm like, okay, well, I practiced. This is how much I practiced this week. And I actually had practiced and stuff, but it felt like, it was a little bit more punitive than I was hoping to get. And I think what really got me was that she complained about me talking too loud. And I'm just thinking, I'm sorry, I'm just a loud talker. That's just who I am. I got this big old voice, which is, and I had been working at a senior center at the time. So at the job, it was, well, but this is the thing. I didn't speak any louder at that job than I would normally speak. It's just that it was naturally okay to But anyway, the point is that I didn't ultimately enjoy it too much, so I stopped taking those classes. So I'm still only a one-handed keyboard player, and I'm only good at it when I'm layering it in multi-tracking. So.
Well, I mean, I was in a band in college, not a very good band or anything, and that's where
dancers though. You had dancers.
Yeah, dancers, but we never performed. We just collected dancers, I think, to some degree, and band members.
It was a community thing,
But we would jam and we would, work, and that's and so I had my guitarist for that band. He taught me how to play bass at the time, and I mean, I knew a lot of musicians, and but I can't play anything, I would say I can't play anything. I make noise, and I know how the instruments work, but and so and I took lessons. I think my brother-in-law teaches guitar.
You can't play like 3 basic chords?
Okay, I could. Well, not on guitar, no.
Really? Okay.
On a ukulele, I can.
Well, okay.
So if that counts, that's
That counts.
I can keep a beat on my drum set. I can,
That counts.
but that's been my level of self-taught, which is that I don't think I could play a song.
Okay.
I don't memorize songs. I never memorize songs. I never really even
Well,
learned
but that's
songs.
just a personality defect on your part. That's not about education. What are you? That's. But you would be if you were to. I mean, I think the point is this: is that if you were to sit down and you actually were to commit for a week to learn a song, you could do it. If it was a
Possibly.
3-chord song, if you were learning an Elvis tune, I bet
Yeah.
you could do it. No problem.
I've tried that. Actually, no. Actually, there was a point, and I have done that before. I have learned a song before, and it wasn't Elvis. It was what does the wise men say? Only fools rush in.
That's Elvis.
Yeah, is that the? I can't remember what the name is.
That's can't help falling in love with you.
Is that okay? Yeah, that's right.
I can't
That's like, yeah.
falling in love with you as the river flows. Wait, we don't want to get dinged by copyright.
Yeah, but I used to know how to play that. I probably could figure that out again. It wasn't complicated.
So, but I mean,
but like I'll learn like little riffs every now and again because tabs are fun.
Well, okay. Let's see. Okay, we're talking about education. What counts as being educated? What is?
Well,
I mean,
okay, I guess. All right, so back because we've kind of lost our track here talking about my lack.
Are we having a meandering conversation? There's the Lost in Las Piñatas.
Yes, this is the Lost part. I mean, okay, so I think it just means being proficient. If you're educated, you're proficient in it. Like, I don't know, like people who can talk music,
wow,
where you can meet with another person and you're talking like, oh yeah, we did this chord progression. It's like, yeah, I like that. And then we do so. I don't know how you people talk because I don't know it. I'm not educated, but I've heard people talking from musicians, and it's fascinating.
What's a sign of because you got a degree in animation, right? So what would be how would an educated animator talk? What would be that?
I mean, I guess when we're talking about like how we're moving things through the process and like different takes on like you're moving your background, you're moving your rig, your characters, and you're doing, I don't know how, to get the effect that you want, and then you watch the playthrough. It's like, oh, look at that, your keyframes and stuff like that, or like having, like when you're watching, like, because most of what I do has to do with like lettering or something, that kind of, so, but like it moves, and does it like stop, or does it like gently get there? Does it bounce? Or those little nuances of.
Well, but that's like fine tuning stuff, though. I mean, like.
But that's stuff that
animation, like with a flip book. Would I be educated?
Well, I mean, the question is, what's your goal? I mean, like that. I mean, you're just talking about different kinds of animation. Then, I mean, that's
okay. Yeah. So
what you were asking about, like, as far as like our language and conversation, like when we can talk about like the ins and outs of what we're doing in those nuances.
Okay.
That's what I
so this is okay. Okay. So I think we're getting onto something here. Is that it has to do education. Doesn't necessarily have to do with being able to do something, but it does have to do with being able to communicate about it.
Right. That's
because I think that's a thing with music for sure. Since I'm self-taught and I really haven't delved into theory and I can't read music, there's a lot of communication that is actually very difficult when I'm talking to more schooled musicians. I mean, it's I don't know. I remember old stories about Jimi Hendrix where he would tell the producer or tell other people, it's like, I want this to sound watery, and I mean, he knew more what he was doing than most people. But I mean, it's like, that's how I communicate. I'm sort of like, I can't tell him I need a descending tritone with a suspended fifth or something like that. I can't. I mean, that was gobbledygook to me. I have no idea what that would even be. But I think that can be really helpful when you're communicating with people in your band if you were able to do that. But I mean, you're still able to get to the point that you want to, but the ease of communicating what you want is more difficult if you don't have a common education. And I think
Right.
that's part of it also as well, is that you want to
But
be educated with similar languages as somebody else. So I don't know, that I think that's sort of a framework that education may be more about communication than anything.
so okay, so creating that base, I guess, in a sense. Because what I was going to say is like, because I feel like, as like video, I mean, video animation, all this stuff that's digital, it's constantly changing and evolving, and you have to continue to, and you have to teach yourself. You're all
Mm.
at some level, it's all self-taught, because they can't, you can't learn it all in school because it's going to change the moment you step out of school, and
Well,
it's
that's a different. Well, yeah. So there's two different things. What's the benefit of? Well, I mean, the benefits of going to school, a proper school,
mhm.
aren't just the education, right?
Right.
Um,
Well, it's also, yeah, it's the connections you meet, the people you meet, the way people you can collaborate with, because the ideas, the what is it, the sharing of ideas, the I don't know, that melting of of meeting of the minds.
sure, sure. I can't think of the term. You're trying to think of another term.
Yeah, yeah. There's
I guess we're undereducated
a
with the term. Um,
but
but yeah, I mean, so education in that regard, but there's also, yeah, you're able to exchange ideas and just see how other people are doing things.
right,
I mean, which all of which you can do on your own as
right.
well.
Yeah, but I
But
mean, but it's
it
it's
can,
a it's a collective place where everyone's going to do the same thing,
yeah,
and that is actually quite nice. When as far as like when I was getting my arts degree, that was like, oh, because I hadn't been in that situation exactly before, where it was like, it was adults all wanting to do art and a teacher there to teach them, and everybody was into it, and it wasn't just like, it wasn't high school, it wasn't the high school class where everybody, it's like, oh, it's an easy class, and some people are just goofing off because it's an easy class, where some people are just taking it. But it was class, they were classes full of people that were artists, that wanted to be artists, that were learning art, and we were all of the same mind in that sense and taking it seriously. And it was just a cool environment to have to be in,
did,
where we could
did you
look at each other's art and learn. And
did you feel like you learned more from the instructors or from the other students?
the instructors, I mean, in my case, the instructors, I
Because I know when I go to the song school program, um, probably my favorite part of it is actually the after hours song circles that they have, and that's ultimately kind of more valuable to me at the thing. But and I learn a lot. Well, and it's like I got my podcast where I interview other songwriters,
right,
and that's not an education situation, but I'm learning a lot from them in the process. Because I'm finding out what their techniques about songwriting are and what their strategies are. Now they've learned a lot of those from formal education sometimes,
hmm
and since a lot of the people I do interview went to song school, then sometimes they're regurgitating what they had learned in those classes.
hmm
Um, so that's a way of doing it. But I actually find, I mean, I really enjoy interviewing people and learning from them that way.
right.
It's which is an informal. Well, I guess it's formal because it's like a podcast, so I actually do it in a formal way. But I'm formally interviewing people. Like the authority situation's kind of flipped, right? Because I'm the host. I'm kind of the authority, and I'm interviewing this person and trying to find things out. Um, anyway, it's you know,
Right. But you're sharing, and that's one of the other things is like when it comes to writing. Actually, I was about to say you're sharing this the secrets of the craft, right?
mhm.
Because like there's a craft to writing, like, and that's one of the things, like with writing especially. We all read stories, we all know stories and have a general idea how to tell a story, but there's a whole craft behind it, that's what you go to school for. You learn that craft. Or if you learn that craft outside of school, but that's how you learn to write things. And once you know the craft, I mean, you can get in discussions about like just the craft of writing. And
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know.
certainly you've got that common experience at
Yeah.
least. But I mean, when it comes to music, it's like, well, what's a verse? What's a chorus? What's a refrain?
Hmm.
And oftentimes those terms, depending on what level of education you have, something like a verse and a chorus, those sometimes are flipped. It's
Hmm.
kind of interesting that I think in more classical stuff that sometimes the chorus is what songwriters would call a verse, and vice versa. Um, but like a refrain is different from a chorus, but I mean they're oftentimes used well, I don't know that a lot of people use the word refrain. I think most people understand a chorus. Verse is maybe a little bit less well known, but you'll have like a coda. You could have a pre-chorus. There's and the bridge, like a bridge. It took me a long time to figure, because I was not formally educated. It took me a long time to understand what the bridge was, because I was reading like about the Beatles, and they would
Hmm.
talk about the middle eighth. The middle eighth. They were always talking about the middle eighth in their songs, and it took me a while to realize they're really talking about the bridge, which is just like 8 bars where you're kind of doing variation from. And I may actually be wrong about this. I may be bastardizing it.
But
Not. I'm totally self-taught. So
so yeah, I don't know. End of the day, you get the job done, right? I mean, and people like what
well,
you're doing.
and
So,
that's the thing where it's like, you can still do the stuff
hmm,
even if you don't necessarily have that common language. So I
right,
think that's where a lot of artists kind of turn their nose up at education, because it just feels like snobbery to some degree,
right.
because
But
you're like, well, I can still get it done, and I can oftentimes get it done as well or better than the more educated artists.
right. No, but I've heard some real I guess academic deconstruction of why is this why is this hip hop, why is this rap so great? What they did here, like with their wordplay and their beats and the
Uh,
timing and it's like the bars that they and it's absolutely fascinating. I would know none of that just listening to it. And it
well,
was just like, oh, that was interesting to listen to. That was a little different. But
well,
then somebody breaks it all down, and it's like, yeah, there are people that study that, and
well. This is something. It's a little bit of a tangent, but the
uh-huh.
the idea of like uh, people sometimes talk about what smart people listen to when it comes to music,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thinking, I don't think there's like music that you lean towards because you're more intelligent. I think it's your intelligence determines how you listen to it. Because I'll listen to extremely intelligent writers who love punk rock, right? Which is dirt simple, super dirt simple. And
Mm-hmm.
they'll, like Lester Bangs used to go off and wax extremely poetically about, how amazing this trashy music was. And I think that's what it is like your intelligence. I think people listen to or consume art more based on passion and their emotions first. And I mean, there are no, you know what? I shouldn't say that, because there's definitely people out there that do look at it intellectually. They're fascinated by stuff intellectually,
Mm-hmm.
but I think a lot of that is imposed. You'll actually go, it's like, well, why does that move me? And then you turn it into something that's sophisticated in perhaps a way that it wasn't intended or done in the first place.
Right, right. But that also, you know, because I think about seeing movies because you're a person that even when you see a movie you're looking at the impact and the way that they're utilizing the cinematography and they're
Sure.
utilizing. Yeah, I mean I get into that with some movies, not all movies, but you know,
Yeah.
and I think that there is. I don't know if you educated on that sort of thing when you how did you come into know getting into things like cinematography, like the is that
I've
all
read,
self taught?
well, I took some, I think I took one class in
Okay,
college on, uh, what is it, semiotics or something, or it was
okay.
on film. It was on film. It was a class on film of some sort, and Did I? I can't even remember it very well. I think I did, but I've read books. I like reading. Reading about movies,
Yeah.
and I've tried making movies, right? So you do learn stuff just from doing stuff.
Right, right. That's actually a big part of that. I mean, like self-taught is what you have to do in the end, ultimately. Anyhow, I guess. I mean, I don't know.
Well, you were making, yeah. It's like everything that people teach you is literally, it has to be by definition old, right? It's been done,
Right.
and that may or may not help you in the future, but it is good to know what other people have done in the past. I have trouble with, I think I have trouble with sometimes the snobbery of it, like this is the way it has to be done.
Yeah.
And, we live in a world where it's constantly changing. And, even if it's been done that way for like 10 years,
Hmm.
well, it's been hundreds of years or whatever. But I mean, things are changing so quickly that you're going to be outmoded real quick if you're not riding the wave. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And I did run into that actually with my animation, doing that. The teacher would say, this is how things have to be done, and I was constantly like, because I knew some stuff, and I'm like, there aren't any rules. There are no rules. I can do whatever I want. It's animation. It's not like real, and
Yeah.
and he didn't like that. But I would make stuff, and I understood what he was saying because I wasn't doing things the way they were supposed to be done.
So you understood what he was saying. You just wanted to be obnoxious.
But I wanted to push the boundaries. That was
How
you
would
want
we
to do something. It's like, sure, that's how you would do it, and everyone else would do it,
Sure.
but I could do it differently. What if we did this instead? And what impact would that have? Does that?
Well, here's a question: education and ego. Because like, it's like I think some people get educated and they use that as kind of a bludgeon to say, I'm better than you. But then you've also got the folks that they have their ego and they don't like the educated stuff so much, so they become snobbish about like, well, that stuff's old. It's not.
Yeah,
You're staying. I don't know.
that's dead, and they're bringing life to.
Yeah, exactly. Or it's like I don't want to be constrained, which is
Right.
education is a form of constraint. And I think there's, you talk to like conservatory musicians and they oftentimes, spend the rest of their lives trying to get away from how strict and formal that stuff was. I don't know. I'm glad that I never took. I mean, as sloppy a musician as I am, I'm glad that I never went to a conservatory, which sounds awful to me.
I've heard, yeah, people basically. There was a woman who went through that and learned, piano, and piano was her, her instrument, and now just doesn't like to play piano. just doesn't like. It seems like it just killed that desire to be on that instrument because the way that the whole process went. So I'm like, wow, I'd never heard anybody talk about it like that who went to school for, it's normally like, they took on this instrument, they loved making music, but she was like, yeah, no, that was just sucked, and like never like playing piano anymore. Can play it, probably can play it beautifully, but plays guitar.
Well, yeah, you certainly don't want your instruction to be so strict that it saps all of your passion for it.
Yeah.
Though I'll say this, I remember when I was a kid in high school, a lot of my friends used to complain about their music instruction that they would do, on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, I don't really want to do that. I really don't want to do that. And then I remember talking to them later on, and they were like, oh, no, I really enjoyed that, and since I picked up music, I picked it up late in life. It wasn't until my late 20s that I started learning how to play guitar, for instance. I regretted not having that basic instruction, because I think that would have been a great time to have learned how to read music and understand basic theory. And it's been a more difficult kind of hodgepodge approach as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
So so in a lot of ways, I do regret not getting more formally educated and just sort of persevering, even though one thing one thing, this is not about education, but one thing I learned as I get older, that when people complain to you about stuff, that doesn't mean that they dislike it. They're just venting. It's like, they're just letting out the bad stuff.
That's what I was going to say. Is
Stuff they
I
don't
feel like
really.
when kids complain about things, a lot of times they're just. I mean, they're just they want to just be left to play and just do nothing more often than not. But they love learning.
Yeah.
There's just an inherent, like when they go to swim class every week and they're like, I don't want to go to swim class. Can I stay? It's like, but at the end of, like, once they're in the class, they're enjoying it. They're having a great
Yeah.
time. They're in the pool. They're swimming, and
Yeah.
it's fun.
So it's like the complaining is just sort of, it's just a side effect's not the word. What is it? It's just a necessary part of the process. It's like anything that you do that's worthwhile, you're going to complain at some point. But that doesn't mean that you don't want to do it, or that it isn't a net positive. I guess that's the thing. I don't know.
All right. So, do you feel like we've discussed this?
We've certainly discussed it. I don't know is there a landing spot we want to have? I mean,
I feel like, well,
education. What is it? I mean, is it formal education? Because we're talking about formal education versus informal education,
right? And I mean,
and complete lack of education.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a complete lack. We haven't really talked about a complete lack of education. What would that be? I mean,
well, that would just be trial and error, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, if you're not going to, because I think of education as, basically looking, learning from other people's experience.
Right.
And if you don't have, if you're not educated by other people's experience, then all you have left is your own experience. So that would be trial and error, which, there's no reason why. I mean, anybody can make music. You don't have to. I mean, it's impossible to, go into it clean slate, right? I mean, because you've
learned something just by having ever heard it or having been exposed to it,
So I mean, is that? I mean, yeah. So I mean, there's that kind of learning too. Yeah.
I
don't know, trial and error. But I think that you do get some really innovative stuff that way. But at the same time, you also get people that reinvent the wheel, right? They end up coming up with the same thing that to them is really exciting and new, and then they'll find out, oh, this has been done 20 million times.
Yeah,
But that doesn't mean it's
bad, or
it doesn't mean that it's bad or lacks value. Yeah, because it's certainly, you always get that with, and again, I'm filtering it all through music, but you'll hear song lyrics that it's like, okay, I've heard that lyric before, only better, right?
Mm-hmm.
But to that person who was writing it, that rhyme was like new. There was a point where love and glove and above, those were rhymes that were new to you, or to other people, and it was like, oh wow, our love fits like a glove. That's profound, and it is profound for a moment, and then you hear it like 1,000 times, and so it's, but it. Where was I going with this?
I don't know. Something about no glove, no love, or.
Well, it's about discovering stuff. I guess it's the pitfalls of self-education. I mean, I think sometimes you can genuinely, or not even self-education, but trial and error. If you're doing a clean slate, you're doing it all completely just on your instincts and stuff. That in some cases, you'll come up with something completely innovative nobody else has ever come up with. Other times, many times, perhaps more often, you'll reinvent the wheel. You'll do the same thing that other people have done, and it may be exciting for you, but it may not be so exciting for everybody else.
Right. And if you've learned all of those things, though, then you can take that art and move beyond it. You can take what you've learned and build upon it, make something new based upon the things that you've.
So that's just experience, right?
That's like, your musical like remix of things, It may be similar, it may be the same, but it's coming at it from a completely different way.
So I guess really what it is like whether you get formal education, informal education, or no education, just being willing to to progress, change, learn from your experiences, and just make adjustments as you go. That's what you really should do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's required as far as you're going to go anyhow. So you're always self-taught, even if somebody's telling you what it is, right? If somebody's teaching you, you still have to do that work. So,
well, you're
understand it.
self-actualized. There's sort of, well, there's experience always comes into play. So, there's that's an aspect. There's no way to escape the school of hard knocks or whatever, or the school of, life. You're gonna learn as you live.
Okay. Well, I think that is a great note to end on.
Well, I guess that's it for this episode. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like, follow, and share the program with your friends. Also, check out my other podcast, Raw Song. You're not even going to edit this, are you? Also, check out my other podcasts, Raw Songwriting. What?
I was going to say, do you want me to take that line?
Sure.
It's like, also check out Dave's other podcasts. Does that, like we did that before?
We did, yeah, that's fine. Do it.
Okay, all right.
Do it.
So you can also check out Dave's other podcasts, Raw Songwriting, Sleepy Tales and Slumber Tunes, and his movie review show. What's the name of that, Dave?
Mr. Woz, which stands for movie reviews with original songs. Now it's time for you to whack your own piñata and see what shakes out.
Let's do that again.
Now it's time for you to whack your own piñata and see what shakes out.
Get lost.
Beat it.